we're pretty confident we're going to have the first three are going to be looking at sea level rise, heat, and precipitation. And there's a ton of data that's available on websites that belong to NOAA that we're drawing down right now. There are something like 36 buoys just on the east coast of Florida that are taking these measurements that show that indeed the water level around Florida has come up by about a foot since 1947. That temperatures around Florida have increased, generally speaking, by about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit around Florida. And that varies, a little bit around the world. Precipitation, extreme precipitation events are increasing at an alarming, frankly, rate. And so assembling that for all, in a way that's going to be relevant for all of our newsrooms, it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're working on it very aggressively, and we feel we've done enough work so far. We know the first three we've got solid.
I mean, part of this is to make it understandable and comprehensible for people is through visuals, of course. So the photos are going to be really important. I also am sort of thinking forward to how AR and VR capability can potentially help you. If you can have an app that allows your readers to enter a space or to hold up their phone and see, here I am on this corner in Miami Beach, and in 5 years, based on the climate science we now know, what is this corner going to look like? Is my house still going to be here? I mean, that's a way to really connect with people. I know we have the mayor of Tampa in this room, and other politicians and political candidates, and so I want to ask Mindy and Mark both, what is your message from some of the work you're seeing so far in terms of, you told us about what Miami Beach is doing, or Miami City as a government is doing. What are some of the things you've seen around the state that have been most effective from a solutions point of view so far?
I think that a lot of cities are borrowing from each other some of these things, so some of these things are and I think that that's where the real work is happening. Just like we're sharing content, I think they're sharing best practices. And I think Tampa has a whole different Tampa and St. Pete, or you all have a whole different set of vulnerabilities that we have. And we do feel like we're living in a petri dish for climate change in South Florida, but I think you might be in that same dish.
Tell us about the dish, Mark.
But I think the voters too, I would say, I don't know how it's been here, but I think that voters are also willing to kind of put their money where their mouth is. The city of Miami voters just passed a $200 million bond issue to specifically tackle climate change. So I think that's another interesting aspect to this issue.
Well, it wasn't not long ago that we had a governor in the state that wouldn't even allow you to say the words climate change. And that's changing, and with the DeSantis administration, it's changing in Tampa with the new mayor. So I think a lot of communities are starting to really take this seriously.
I want to ask a broader question. I want to also give people a chance to come up to the two mics to line up if you have any questions, because we'll be taking some questions. So while people are getting ready to line up, I want to ask you, what I found, we just had our launch with the Boston Globe the week before last, which was fantastic. They've done a huge project about the warming, how Cape Cod, how warming is affecting Cape Cod. It was a huge multimedia presentation. They did a 12-minute documentary that they showed. The Pulitzer Center's education team wrote a curriculum that can be used in K-12 schools to accompany it. One of my colleagues is actually on the Cape right now, helping with a youth-led climate summit and bringing the Boston Globe reporting, the main reporter, and our curriculum to kids across Cape Cod. We've seen youth as really a leader in this space. But I'm wondering, how do you balance the question of reporting in a way that activates energy and informs without completely bumming people out and making them feel paralyzed? Because that's the criticism we've gotten about some of the climate change reporting that we've partnered on in the past, that now, oh my God, the icebergs are melting, everything is melting, it's so terrible, the polar bears are dying, and now I just want to crawl into bed, I'm so depressed.
Well, I think part of it is you don't just dump and run, right? You don't just do stories on a topic and wipe your hand and walk away. I think it's important to start to view our journalism around solutions and to start to even suggest by talking to experts what solutions there might be, how you can act, how you can do things differently, what you might do to change your behavior. I think if you start to go at this from a standpoint of, here's a problem, now here's some things that you can do about it, that might give people a little bit of hope that there is something that they can take into their own hands. If you don't lay out a roadmap like that, or if there is no discussion about solutions, then you're right, it could be as depressing as the statistics you just shared about the media industry. So I think it's really, really important that we start to look towards where do we go from here.
And I just want to say, since the project that we're doing had the big gasp in the room, the first
to go.
So I'll just say, our project is really intended to answer the most common and most difficult question that people ask, which is how much time do we have? And as I said, there literally have been national stories that put Miami underwater by 2100, but the modeling suggests that that's hyperbole. And so what we're trying to do, it's true that sections of Miami may be underwater, but the entire city of Miami will not be underwater. And so part of this project seeks to identify areas that are vulnerable, but on the neighborhood level, like just on a more like granular level, as opposed to just this. And that, I think, brings nuance to the conversation. We're working with scientists, as you mentioned, to really come up with what are the right metrics, what's the modeling, and we all agree on what are the most vulnerable places, and then go to those places and see what they are doing to get ahead of it again. So, I think that that is part of it. I think because we live here too, like we have a stake in the outcome, right? We're looking at where our houses sit, also in those flooding, those gloom and doom, Armageddon, flooding maps that once in a while pop up, and so we want the answers just as well as you do. I mean, you're living here, we've all chosen to make this our home, and so we want to know, what are we going to leave to our children, possibly our grandchildren? Where should we buy our next house? Should we be selling now and, taking the money and running inland? So there's a bunch of, I think that's what we bring to it that's very different from what we often get when, like I said, national parachute journalists come into our backyard and try to do the same stories.
There's about 21 million people in our state, and 2/3 of them live in coastal communities, which is by far the highest percentage of people living in that. Sort of makes sense, right? I mean, we're one gigantic peninsula. But more people live in coastal communities in this state than any other part of the country by a long shot. So the impact here is going to be distinct.
To me, that's another really powerful aspect of local and regional journalism, and that's why in our Pointer Media Trust Survey, which my old colleague Mindy here knows all about, I commissioned some Pointer Media Trust surveys, national surveys, when I was working here, and part of what we found was that people still trust local news. There's huge distrust of national news based on partisan, affiliation, but across partisan lines, people still trust their local news outlets. And part of that is these are the people who live among you. Their kids go to school with your kids. They, vote in the same elections. As we said, their homes are at risk. So these are all issues that affect, the people who are writing about it very deeply. Yes, and what I'd like to ask is please, and I know you, Marty, but I'd like you to identify yourself for the whole group because you have a very relevant role as a lawyer working on environmental justice.
Hi, thank you. No pressure. I was waiting for other lines to form behind me, so that's why I took my time. But so this is kind of a convoluted question.
Marty, can you just identify yourself and your
Sorry,
role?
I know, dear. I apologize. So Marke Collins, I'm president of Collins Law Group. I work with a lot of local governments, a lot of local governments across the state. I represent a lot of environmental organizations. I lobby up in Washington, D.C. and in Tallahassee. And my whole practice focuses on coastal resiliency, climate change, sea level rise, harmful algal blooms, on and on and on and on. So I'm based here in the Tampa Bay area, and I just can't stress enough my gratitude for what you all are doing with this coalition. I also can't stress enough exactly what Indira just said, the value of local news. When I go up to Washington, D.C., it's the local papers that are in the Florida delegation's office. That is what they are looking at, that is what they know their constituents are reading, and that is what they're analyzing. So it's terribly important. A question I have for you all, because I've been working on these issues now for over a decade, probably closer to 15 years. And I've seen it go from global warming, climate change, sea level rise, because that's what people can handle. They can't handle the big, words. I've sat in focus groups, and the whole partisan issue of this has been really striking to me, particularly in Florida. And with what you all are taking on, and I saw you all approaching and considering focusing on human health. To me, human health is a big part of this, particularly with the algal blooms. And now we're talking about environmental refugees. This has become a reality in Louisiana and it's starting to happen in Florida. Here's my question. We're talking a lot about local governments. We have a new governor who's really